Paris-Dakar Rally, the world's longest, the world's toughest, and the world's most unforgiving motorsport event. For 3 weeks a year, man and machine come face to face with nature at her harshest in the ultimate sporting challenge. A challenge designed by the Frenchman Thierry Sabine to test amateur and professional alike in the huge melting pot of the Sahara Desert. For fun, Sabine scheduled this adventure for January, so that the competitors, tired from a long winter in Europe, could escape to the balmy heat of West Africa. The thought of the sun-kissed beaches of Dakar was a very tempting alternative to the cold and misty dampness of Paris. In the heart of the Sahara, the world's largest desert, hundreds of drivers and riders raced not just against each other, but against vast expanse of empty desert. Sand dunes as high as tower blocks and stark mountains as barren and as rugged as the surface of the moon destroy all but the best prepared vehicles long before they catch a whiff of the sea air at Dakar, the end of a rally that covers a distance equivalent to a quarter of that around the world. In armchairs around the globe, an audience of 200 million people are glued to their television sets and radios to hear reports of adventure from the heart of Africa. Hundreds of miles from civilization, motorsport heroes battle their way through the Sahara, and each evening, as the weary warriors rest, journalists from every media form send news of the day's drama to the hungry audiences around the world. Far from the asphalt and grids of the Grand Prix world, drivers like Jacques Lafitte and Patrick Tambay relish the chance to compete in the heat and dust. Harry Vartanel, the 1981 World Rally Champion and winner of the Paris-Dakar in 1987, is as much at home in the desert as he is on the ice and snow of his native Finland. A far cry from life on the high seas as a champion powerboat driver or in Formula One paddocks as team director, Ted Toleman lives for the Paris-Dakar. Now a veteran of the event, the toughest teak Essex businessman is lined up in Paris for the past 3 years in a hope that he and the former rallycross and world hot rod champion Barry Lee might reach Dakar. In 1987, the Toleman Paris-Dakar team was launched in the austere surroundings of No. 1 Savile Row, the former headquarters of the Royal Geographical Society. A team of Range Rovers kitted out for the foray into the desert was put on show for a curious band of pressmen. Front page news was made a week into the new year when the team was forced to retire from the first Dakar after the strict Algerian authorities arrested 2 team members for alleged currency irregularities. The only way to win Paris-Dakar is to build a lightweight desert racer. Some teams convert existing models like the Range Rover or Mitsubishi. But for 1988, Toleman unveiled their own challenger, the high-speed TG88. An all-out rally racer, the TG88 barely allowed Ted Toleman and Barry Lee room to carry their sleeping bags. One of the fastest machines in 1988, it darted through the dunes, leaving only the echo of its 3.9-litre engine and the other competitors in its wake. A week into their second Paris-Dakar, the fine Saharan sand caught out 119 competitors and the Toleman service truck. Without backup, the only option Toleman had was to retire his car from the event. A race winner without a doubt, the TG88 was delicately transformed into the T89 Enduro for the team's 3rd attempt at reaching Dakar. But for Toleman, reaching the Senegalese capital is only a small part of entering the Paris-Dakar.
Ted, what first prompted your interest in Paris-Dakar?
As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the last great adventures left, and I've always been one for pitting yourself against the elements, and after doing the Atlantic, the desert was a natural.
And apart from having a good race vehicle, what are the most important characteristics that you need?
I think perseverance and patience, because you have to be patient with one another. It's a long time to be together under stress, and I think those are the important features.
Last year you had a lot of problems. Can you just go through, give us an idea of what they were?
Well, one of the main problems is in this sort of thing you obviously become competitive immediately, and it's taken a couple of years, if you like, for us to get to understand that when you actually do get stuck in the sand, jumping out and rushing around and pulling the sand away is not the way to do it. You've got to take your time, you've got to relax and get on with it.
What attracts you back?
Just the desert, the adventure, and wanting to get to Dakar. When only 10% out of the total numbers of something like 500 leave Paris, only 10% get to Dakar. To be one of that 10%, that would be success for us.
In his office, behind the steering wheel of the T89 Enduro, Barry Lee has to nurse the Desert Enduro across a sea of sand twice as wide as the Atlantic. A love of the desert, the excitement, the challenge are all things that make Lee a Paris-Dakar rally addict.
Barry, you've been competitive for a long time. What makes Paris-Dakar special?
Getting to Dakar, it's a long, long way, and it's man against the elements, machinery against the elements, and trying to control a very high-powered, highly developed car against the elements of nature.
Compared with your other racing sports that you've been involved with, how dangerous is Paris-Dakar?
As dangerous as you want to make any other motorsport. Anything over 30 mile an hour, so Grista says you're on your own. So, you know, that's down. You put the dangers of any sport to the back of your mind. You must do that, but you must always appreciate that these dangers do happen.
How demanding is it?
As demanding as you want to make it, but this particular event is the most demanding event that I've ever seen. And this is, I've recorded it now from the air. I've been on the event twice, and this is the third time, and luckily we've now managed this year to be able to come into the desert and do all our testing, so we stand a very, very good chance. We know that we won't break it in the rough. The only thing that will break in the rough is if I make a mistake, if I run too quickly and too hard for too long a time. And we've actually know now that we can get in and out of sand quite easily.
Toleman and Lee are the front men. The faces that appear on television and in the papers, they generate over £1 million worth of exposure for their sponsors annually. Behind the all-out attempt to be the first British winners of the Paris-Dakar, however, is a team of specialists. Expert rally mechanics like Rodney Lyne and John West, support truck driver Carl Erik Christensen, and drivers of the Fast Pursuit Range Rover, Jan van Tuyl and Gary Toleman. Outside Oxford on a bright winter's day, the team are paraded in front of the cameras and journalists. The patriotic blue and white vehicles are spotlessly clean to show off their sponsors' names. Redesigned by the champion racing car company Reynards, the Match-Show machine needs only desert atmosphere to be at home. A week later in London's Savile Row, Zach the Camel adds some Saharan flavour, posing uneasily close to the rows of camel coats at Gives and Hawkes. Complementing the decorative splendour of Paris at Christmas, hundreds of motorbikes and four-wheel drives painted all the colours of the rainbow mass for scrutineering in the south of the city. The vehicles are checked over by the marshals, who see that they conform to mechanical and safety specifications. No turkey, no Christmas pud for Toleman and Lee as the 1989 Paris-Dakar starts on Christmas Day. Thousands of French line the route south through France to the Boxing Day prologue in Barcelona. A sprint around the docks in Barcelona, the prologue decides in which order the cars and bikes leave the first special stage in Tunisia. Without seeing any desert, Ari Vatanen, the favourite, rolls his Peugeot and is soon after followed by Van Tuyl and Gary Toleman in the Range Rover. The high-speed support catches fire as fuel leaks onto the exhaust. A quick spurt from a fire extinguisher soon puts out the blaze, but the delay puts the support vehicle far behind the T89 Enduro for the first few days of the rally proper, the race into the Sahara. Sand as far as the eye can see, and farther. Soft, hard, fine, and coarse, the desert always changes from minute to minute and from day to day. The trick is to keep going, and as fast as is safe. Stopping could make a car sink axle deep into the Sahara. The desert doesn't differentiate between Ari Vatanen or the humblest entrant. Status means nothing, and respect everything. Peugeot and Mitsubishi are the giants of the Paris-Dakar, the teams everybody else wants to beat. But million-dollar budgets only buy the best in long-distance rallying, not a passage across the desert. Riding above the sand like a hovercraft, the T89 Enduro is at home in the desert. Light and powerful, the dune racer rides over many problems heavier cars might sink into. Behind the Enduro is the Toleman team's fast Range Rover. Old hands at the Paris-Dakar, car and driver are in the rally to keep the Enduro on course and free from breakdowns. For Toleman and Lee, Libya's the end of the road. Electronics don't like the heat and sand, and the high-tech T89 refuses to start in Sabha. The Range Rover is still in the rally. Without the responsibility of servicing the T89, Gary Toleman and Jan van Tuyl begin to climb the leaderboard. Confidence in the Toleman camp at Tahoa turned to tragedy as John West and Roger Mortimer brought the refueled car back to the campsite for the night. On a corner, just outside the camp, the car rolls and the two mechanics are badly hurt. With John West out of the rally and his navigator's place in the truck vacant, the organisers banned the truck from supporting the battered Range Rover. The fight to stay in the rally and be the first British entry to reach Dakar for 8 years ends near Bamako in Mali, when the Range Rover catches fire for the second time in the event. No marshals are on hand this time to put out the blaze, and the damaged car burns out within minutes. Ted Toleman flew out to Mali to see his team home to Dakar. It wasn't to be. The team's third attempt at the treacherous rally ends short at the beach at Dakar, where Ari Vatanen wins for the second time in 3 years. But Ted Toleman and his team will be back in the desert next year to finish the 1,000 miles they left uncharted in 1989.
When only 10% out of the total numbers of something like 500 leave Paris, only 10% get to Dakar, to be one of that 10%, that would be success for us.
In prologue performance, Toleman was 5th away, but though the Metro Raider ran well, other problems were to bring his attempt to a premature end. As Ted Toleman explains.
Well, unfortunately, through the severity of the event, we made it in just over 9 hours, but our truck support vehicle took 23 hours and unfortunately would have been out of time.
So we're talking about the first stage of the event, which has come in for an awful lot of criticism. It was really very tough, wasn't it?
It was very tough. In fact, it was just too tough, really, for a start of a rally. It gave no chance at all for amateurs to get acclimatised.
Did the organisers just get it wrong this year?
Yeah, I think they got it wrong. I think they tried this year, because it's the 10th anniversary of the rally, to make it something special, but they've just gone overboard.
The event certainly started as one very much for the amateur, the big adventure for the amateur to try to get to Dakar. It's changed pretty much in character now, hasn't it?
It's changed very much in character because the manufacturers have come into the rally now, the Peugeots and the Range Rovers, and one wants to see them in there. But of course they've got one goal, and that's to win the event. So speed is paramount to them, and the amateurs can't keep up, and hence you get them strung out for many, many miles.
Could be this British challenger, the Enduro 89 of Ted Toleman and many times British hot rod champion Barry Lee. This is their third attempt at reaching Dakar. Their son, Gary Toleman, this was his first attempt in their fast service Range Rover. He was to turn the car over in the prologue itself. Undaunted, he would repair it and carry on for a considerable amount of time. The challenge from Ted Toleman and Barry Lee was to gain strength during the run south into Libya. He was to be in the top 50, a good place at that. From the British Enduro 89 was to finish in Saba in southern Libya. An electrical fault causing the